Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. ARPA, USDA, RDOF, state grants, how to apply and when. I'm Jonathan Nicholson with ISP Supplies, and thank you to everyone for attending today. Broadband funding is a hot topic these days. With WISPs and fiber providers planning expansions and upgrades, now is the perfect time to find the funding needed to make these projects a reality. Adtran has a very well put together broadband funding program available to you, which keeps you up to date on all funding opportunities by state that are made available to businesses like yours, dedicated to connecting the unconnected. They have designated experts assigned to each state and funding type to help customers every step of the way from application to fulfilling the funding requirements. Today, we're joined by Ash Brown. She's the Senior Director of Field Marketing with Adtran. She will cover in depth the ins and outs of applying for funding, the do's and don'ts that could be the deciding factors to whether or not you qualify for the funding programs that you are applying for. We will also cover insights on how to get involved with your state offices and be heard, as well as critical makeup of BEAD funding. This is the webinar that will help you find the money. Please submit any questions that may come up via chat, and we will cover them after the slide presentation. We will also be recording this webinar for anyone who may have missed it or would like to rewatch it. In addition, we have prepared a few polls throughout the webinar to help us custom tailor future training topics for you. So please make sure to participate if you're able to. So let's get started. We have a lot to cover. Ash, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Jonathan, and hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Just want to start off with a huge thank you to ISP Supplies for having Adtran on today to talk with you all about this important topic. So thank you to the ISP Supplies team. Thank you for everyone who is on today. Excited to present some insights, talk about information as far as what are we hearing from the state broadband offices? And then also, what are we hearing from CTC? I'll talk a little bit more about CTC as we get going in the presentation today. So first off, what's going to be covered? I'm going to kick off with just some introductions so you can learn a little bit more about me. I'm then going to talk about some insights and advice from CTC Technology and Energy. Then go over some thoughts from state broadband offices. Also have some additional advice tips from consultants in the industry. We'll then go into final highlights, key takeaways, and then be able to go over questions that are submitted in the chat. As we go through today, as Jonathan mentioned, make sure to drop your questions in throughout. So don't lose your thought. If you have a question, type it in, and we'll make sure that we're getting all of those together so we can cover them at the end. All right, so who am I? Some of you might know me. I'm Ash Brown. As Jonathan mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Field Marketing at Adtran. I have been in multiple roles throughout the industry. This has been my only career path since I started. First, I started at a family-owned telecom in Western Wyoming. We did have wireless point-to-point. We had cable plant, DSL, fiber, went through it all, managing it from the marketing side and also understanding all of our analytics, and handled a lot of the regulatory as well. After that, I was a marketing customer experience consultant for providers throughout the nation, including WISP and electrics and municipals. And then directly before Adtran, I was at a billing provider where I helped greenfield companies start into the fiber business, understanding what they need. At Adtran, I handle the field marketing piece, which majority of people have no idea what that is. But really what I do is I really work hard at understanding what is happening in the industry, what are the challenges that are facing operators holistically, and how can Adtran do the research for operators so we can create a knowledge base for you to succeed. And one of those main topics right now is on the funding piece. We are in a kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of what's going on with funding. I think everyone believed that to be true back at RDOF, and we know how that is kind of shaken out. But with the new funding coming down from the NTIA, we are in a completely different space when it comes to funding, as far as the opportunity that's there for you all to succeed. And so the insights that I share today will help you better understand kind of what's happening behind the scenes, what are things that you should be aware of, so that you can get engaged and help enable your team to succeed with what's coming down the pipeline. Another important thing just to note that Reconnect 3 did announce today $502 million in awardees. And why that's important is that's just another one piece of the funding that's happening. So Reconnect 3 made those announcements. Why it's important, I think, for operators to pay attention to the different awards that are coming out is to understand what's happening in your area. Maybe some of you were the winners of some of that. Maybe you weren't, but important to understand who was and what their area. So if you've not reviewed the Reconnect 3 release on the awardees, I would highly recommend that. So let's hop into talking about CTC and the insights from that group. CTC is an organization that is working with the states. So they're working with the state broadband offices, other local government agencies to help them understand what is happening in the funding space. When it comes to BEAD specifically, the Notice of Funding Opportunity dictates about 75% of the requirements. So CTC will help the states implement those, but the other 25% is going to be left up to the state to decide what those requirements are. And CTC is one of the organizations that is helping the states outline those requirements, understand the Notice of Funding Opportunity, build their plan for their state. And so we have worked with CTC to be able to better understand what are they hearing from the states, what are the challenges, what are the different topics that are happening. It's really critical for operators to understand those items because then it helps you get engaged. So talking with CTC, they kind of provided a whole list of insights from the work that they're doing with states. I think the biggest takeaway here is understanding that the states are very, very overwhelmed. In addition, not all of the states have a true telecom expert within their organization. So in the past, when we looked at different grant funds that were coming down the pipeline, states were maybe managing 10 applications. Now they're going to be looking at over 100, and they are just now staffing up. So the states are overwhelmed. They don't necessarily have the resources that are telecom experts. They are looking for information. In addition, with the NTIA funding, it is no longer coming down from the government at a federal national level. Each state is going to create their own program. So every state is going to be different. If you are an operator who serves multiple states, it's not just going to be important for you to understand what's happening in Nevada. If you also serve parts of New Mexico or Arizona, you're going to need to really understand what is happening in each of those states and be able to provide support to each of them. I think that when you look at this list of different insights from CTC, it's very clear that the states need help, and that's where operators can come in and help. They can provide education. You can talk with your state and understand what it is they're doing, what it is they need help with, really create a channel where there's going to be two-way education between you as the operator and what's happening at the state level. By doing that, you're positioning yourself to be in that track of talk that's happening so that you're understanding, you're able to provide insights, you're able to ask questions before their plan is formalized. And we'll talk a little bit about the timeline in particular to BEAD here in a minute, but getting engaged with the state is going to make sure that you're in the loop before anything is released. You're able to provide feedback, like I said, ask questions. Some of the other new pieces when it comes to the BEAD funding particularly is there are going to be requirements around community engagement and also digital inclusion, digital equity. And those are really new. They've been topics in the past, but not necessarily hard requirements. And so as we move forward with this new funding, there are going to be more requirements. So it's going to be important that you have input into those, that you understand what type of scoring system the state's setting up, because some of it will be realistic. And if they don't have the education from you, some of it could be unrealistic. And so really get to the point of understanding your state's process, engage with them, share data, be a knowledge source for them. Talk with them about what you're doing, what your challenges are, understand what they know so that you can fill in the gaps of what they don't know. Your state very well could look to you as a subject matter expert, even be able to invite you to their meetings to listen or to even be an educational source for everyone who's involved at the state level. One thing that I did want to talk about is middle mile, but before I do talk about the middle mile program, Jonathan, why don't we pull up our first poll?
Perfect. All right, so our first poll here is, are you currently working with your state broadband office? We'll give everyone a little time to answer.
And again, as Jonathan mentioned, the importance of these polls are for us to understand where you're at, so ISP Supplies can provide further education for topics where maybe you're interested in getting more information. And I will talk later on in the webinar about how Adtran and ISP Supplies can help get you connected with that state broadband office. If you don't know who the contact is, we do have those and can help get you connected.
Okay, so we received some responses. It looks like 85% of the attendees responded, and we have 38% yes and 62% no.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that, Jonathan. So we'll circle back on the importance of the state broadband office when I get to their insights. But now let's talk about the Middle Mile Grant Program. Some of the folks on the call today are probably aware of this program. You might have even applied. Application deadline is fast approaching because it is September 30th. If you've not started on this already, I would say what's important is for you to follow what's happening. The awardees will happen next year, and if you're not involved, that's all right. But the important piece is who are going to be those awardees particular to your area. So you understand what they're doing as far as this middle mile process, what they're going to be using the funding for, who those entities are, because they could potentially be partners of you going forward. So if you did not go after the Middle Mile Grant Program money, it's not make or break to your plan. It was definitely an opportunity. But this is a $1 billion bill that is going to, the awardees will be able to use it for construction, improvement or acquisition of facilities and equipment, engineering design, permitting, work-related projects, personnel costs, including salaries and benefits, and then other costs that are outlined. So this middle mile program, the money that's coming out from this will help the overall connection and help set providers up for success. And so just pay attention to these timelines, pay attention to the announcements. This is an area Adtran is tracking all of the different awardees. We will be tracking this program. And so getting involved with our funding update list, we can help make sure that you are getting the information as we're receiving it as well. Wonderful. Now really just want to hit on talking a little bit about the state broadband offices and talk about some of the insights from the state broadband offices, the feedback that we've received from them. And so the role that Adtran is playing here is there's no way that operators can be talking with CTC, and CTC wouldn't necessarily be your consultant, so why would you talk to them? And for a lot of you, you've not engaged with the state broadband offices. So what we're trying to do here is kind of fill those gaps for you by having a lot of the conversations and getting the ball rolling. When it comes to the state broadband offices, we are tracking every single state. We know the information regarding their office, the primary contact, if they have regular meetings going on. And so we can be a resource for you if you don't have those connections. But the state broadband offices, a lot of them have been in place for years. There's particular states that have done really well. One in particular is the state of Minnesota. And some of these states, they're just now forming their staff, or they just started a couple months ago. So not only have these people not been in these positions, but they are now completely overwhelmed by understanding not just the notice of funding opportunity for BEAD, but also the middle mile program, the digital equity programs. The states have to go through all of this and understand it all. That doesn't mean that they have the time to understand what operators are doing. And so that's the role that you can come in, is helping, being an education source, being a thought leader, being a supporter of their efforts, and really, really understanding what it is your state is trying to accomplish. And so if you're not engaged at your state, that's step one for sure. Figure out who the contact is, or we can help you with that. And then start the discussion. Make sure that you're following their website. Make sure that you're reading the announcements that they're making on their website. A lot of the states are holding regular monthly meetings where you can be an attendee. If you're not aware if your state's hosting those, find out and get involved for sure. And figure out what type of education you could be providing. I think from WISP particularly, it is understanding what the underserved requirements are going to look like. If it's going to be simply looking at areas that don't have 25 by 3, areas that aren't 100 by 20, and where is it that you are today with your speed offerings? What is it that you can do to start putting a plan in place to deploy fiber through your network to get to fiber to the prim, so you can offer 100 by 100 symmetrical speeds? And so that's another opportunity here, before I get into some more of the state broadband office thoughts and talking through those with you, for us to look at who on the call. If Jonathan, you want to pull up our poll number 2, who on the call is offering 100 by 20 or higher currently today with your network and your plans?
Okay, let's give it a couple seconds here. Voting is in progress. All right, looks like we have 71% said yes and 29% no.
Perfect. Thanks, Jonathan. That's great. For those of you that are offering that, that positions you really well. I think when we start looking at building your funding plan and how you will work with the states to particularly go after the BEAD funding, there will be a process of being able to make sure you're providing the data of where you serve and having speed test data to back your network offerings, to show that your area has that 100 by 20, or how you potentially are going to go after those funds to offer speeds higher than that, to deploy fiber to the prim, fiber to the home, to get to the point of offering 100 by 100 symmetrical. And when we look at the state broadband office thoughts, a lot of these mirror what CTC said, but I want to go into a little bit more detail. So the first, let's talk about the education piece. I'm going to give my 2 cents. Not all of it has to really resonate exactly. It's more from my conversations with multiple state broadband offices, what they're needing. And so the first piece that they're really wanting is the education. They want to know what you as the operator in their state are doing. What matters to the communities you serve, what matters to you, how you want to be involved. Are you planning to do a complete fiber to the home, fiber to the prim overbuild? What are you doing with your wireless technology? What in your technology or your kind of landscape of your community makes sense for you to stay as a wireless provider versus overbuilding with 100% fiber? So they want to understand that from the operators. They want to hear from you. They want to hear your story. And they want you to ask them, where are they at in their process? Are they having meetings that you can participate in? What can you do for them to better position them to understand what you are doing, what your plans are? So that education piece is critical. And it starts with a simple conversation. From all of the states that I have engaged with already, they want to talk. They want to exchange emails. They want to hop on the phone. They want to do video. They want you at their state meetings. They want that education. They want that partnership. And so once you start that partnership, as I talked about a little bit earlier, that is really going to enable you to be in the loop. The states and we'll talk about the BEAD key dates on this next slide. But right now they're in this process starting on August 15th. They have 270 days to formulate their state plan. And so once that plan is developed, it's going to be too late. And so they're starting all of that work now. Not all of the states are working with CTC. There are other organizations as well out there that do similar to what CTC does. And some of the states, maybe they have some internal experts. But during this 270-day period, now a little over 30 days of that is gone, is where they're looking at the NOFO, understanding the hard set requirements, making up what their state 25% requirements are going to be. And that is where you want to be able to give input. What type of scoring system are they going to be using? How are they going to rate the different requirements? The more that you understand now, the better that you're going to be able to plan. And this gives you time to get started to really provide that education, plus get education from them. They also, a lot of address data was due last month, and we know that the FCC maps, we'll see when they come out, but that's going to be one piece of data. These state broadband offices are interested in your address data. They're interested in your network data. There's no plan. I know that sometimes as operators, we sit there and it's, well, I don't know if I want to give that to them. Well, the more that they understand, the better that they're going to be able to support you. And you're going to be this education source for them so they communicate with you. So it's going to be important for you to offer whatever it is that they're asking for when it comes to address data, network data, speed data, your technology information. That is really going to allow them to learn as much as possible so they truly understand the underserved areas. The other pieces that the states are focusing on are around digital equity and community engagement. So digital equity, that is going to be one piece that will be built into the BEAD, but there is also digital equity funding that is available. There's $2.75 billion that is being put down through 3 different programs under the Digital Equity Act, and the states have 1 year of planning for that. And that is going to be around digital literacy, digital skills, improving accessibility and inclusivity of public resources, facilitating the adoption of high-speed internet. And so the digital equity piece has its own separate grants. Like I mentioned, there's 3 different programs that are rolling out under that. But the states within the BEAD, part of their requirements could be that you have some sort of digital equity plan in place if you're going after that money, or it may not be a requirement, but their scoring system could allow more points for operators that have that in place. And so if you've not started as an organization talking about digital equity, digital inclusion, I would highly start doing some research. A great place to look is at the Internet for All website and going through the actual NOFO for the Digital Equity Act. That will give you a lot of ideas of what's kind of shaping underneath that. But as an operator, this is a really, really unique area. Should you go after the Digital Equity Act, or should it just be BEAD and you're putting in your application for that, your digital equity plan? What is it you as an operator can do? Can you help train seniors on the use? Can you work with the schools or the library to provide devices? What type of program can you as an operator start to go after this money, to use it in a very unique way to position you with a competitive edge in the marketplace? Reaching out to your community, understanding what the digital literacy needs are. And so doing your research first internally, and then talking with the state. What does the state have planned for this? What are their thoughts on what the state needs? Are they breaking this down from the county level? Have you talked with your local government? The state will lead the efforts, but it will be really important for you to talk with your local government as well. What does the digital equity piece mean? And for you as an operator, what can you do from a training aspect, device, around even cybersecurity? Huge piece goes with telehealth as well. So what are the different things and ideas you can come up with, and then talking with the state and local government about this topic so you can create this two-way education and feedback system to succeed in that realm. The other piece that the states are really talking about, where there could be points for community engagement plans, really talking again with your local government, talking with your schools, hospitals, libraries, all of the community anchor institutions. What are their broadband needs? What do they have today? Are you serving all of those? Is someone else serving those? What is it that broadband is enabling them to do today that's really critical? Or if they actually had higher speeds or they had fiber to their institution, what would that mean for them? How would that be a game changer for your community? So this community engagement piece, I think all of us do a good job of, we maybe sponsor the Little League, or we sponsor barbecue or certain things at the schools, but this goes a lot deeper. It's really putting a plan into place so that you understand what all of the different community anchor institutions are doing today, what their challenges are, and how you as an operator can help kind of conquer some of those challenges for them by being their partner and building them into your story and your plan. Also beginning those relationships with those different community leaders. You're gonna need letters of support. The more you have, the better your application is gonna look. And you don't want to be starting those conversations in January or when the states actually formally release their plan. You want to be starting those conversations now. Build those relationships, understand their needs, start putting your ideas together of how you can help them, and be able to set yourself up for success when it comes to asking for those community support letters. The last real piece, and this is This is everything that I've talked about. It's simply the involvement. You will succeed by being involved. We, as operators, do a good job being involved with our communities, being involved with our customers, trying to reduce churn, trying to get people to upgrade or getting new customers as they move into the area. But this now goes beyond that. It's all that and more. It's being truly involved, understanding your community's needs, understanding what your state's plans are, understanding who the key players are, how you can be an education resource, getting involved. And so I say all this, and I'm assuming majority sitting out of the call are like, okay, yeah, this is great, but how are we going to find the time to do that? I think it's important to look at your organization internally. A lot of you probably do have leadership within the community. And some of you mentioned you're working with state offices, so you're already kind of putting yourself in that spotlight to help the states and be a leader. But really, who in your organization today could support that? Make sure that it's regular conversations that are happening, regular involvement, asking questions, providing feedback, getting involved at your local state level, your state level, and with all of the community anchor institutions. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the key dates when we look at the funding. And so I think what's really remarkable with this funding is the letter of intent we're due in July. Every single state is participating, including Puerto Rico and other territories. But when it comes to the U.S., every single state is participating. It's huge. Every state understands how critical this is. They understand that this is once in a lifetime for them to take advantage of this funding to help close the digital divide for their state. And so the initial planning date started on August 15th. The states now have 270 days to be able to put their plan together, and that clock started ticking on August 15th. They are set to deliver their 5-year action plan within 270 days. Once that happens, again, this is really the critical period from now until that 5-year action plan is released. That plan is going to determine how they're going to fulfill the NOFO requirements and what requirements they're going to set. What is their application process? What is their scoring process? And you want to be involved. So as you're hearing from them, you're understanding the topics, you can provide insights, or maybe you don't have insights, but at least you know. So if a requirement comes out around workforce, you can start putting your plan in place of how you're going to meet that requirement. Or if you hear a requirement that is not attainable, that you can provide insights to the state on why that doesn't work. Once that 5-year action plan is out, it's going to be too late. And so it's really critical to get involved now during this period. This is the most critical period to make sure that you are a thought leader in this process and that your voice is heard. The BEAD program is the $42.45 billion. The funding priorities for the program are sequential, with the first funding priority for providing broadband to underserved areas. The NOFO states those are below 25 by 3. And then the second priority will be underserved areas, those that are below 100 by 20. And then making sure that community anchor institutions have a symmetrical gig connection. Those will be the first 3 priorities under the funding program. And so when you look at your area, that's really, when I talk about engagement with the community anchor institutions, why it's so critical is if any of those are not served today, by a gig, symmetrical, how can you do that? Talking to them, understanding their needs will better position you to go after that money and to put a plan together on how you can deliver that gig symmetrical to those community anchor institutions. And I think we look at our current service territories, and a lot of you said that you do offer 100 by 20 today, which is fantastic. But could you expand? If you received more funding, could you expand? Draw your circle bigger, and you'll see that as when I get into the additional advice from consultants in the industry, you'll see that as one of the pieces of advice. But don't look at just your service territory. What can you do to expand? You know the terrain, you know the area, you know the people, you have relationships. So focus bigger. What is it that you could do if you received this funding to really change the broadband dynamics and provide more for your state and your areas? So let's go into some additional advice from industry consultants and talk a little bit about these insights. So when we look at, and I'm not going to go through all these bullets, I don't even really like throwing a bunch of bullets and words on a slide. I'll let you all kind of go through these and read them. But I think I just want to highlight some of the key things here, because when I talk with different industry partners, CTC, State Broadband Office, and the operators that I work with on the regular, there are some real common themes. And so when we look at that, it is what is truly unserved and underserved, understanding not only your areas and how they relate to that, but what is surrounding areas that fit into those categories and how can you be part of the solution. Making sure you understand the notice of funding opportunity. Again, you can go to the Internet for All website or the NTIA website. You can easily get to the links from there. But going through that and understanding, yeah, it's lengthy and it's not fun, but I can tell you there's a lot of important insights in there where you can start understanding the high level structure of at least that 75% of the requirements that the states are going to have to abide by. And what are the opportunities to potentially stack grants from what you may have previously received for funding, or also what are going to be your opportunities to create matching funds. If you're not going to come in with those funds or all of those funds, what can you stack or what can you get for potentially in-kind type donations? Start working on all of that now, putting the applications for any of you that are on the call, putting your applications together is not an easy process. So really starting now, getting your data, getting your insights together, understanding surrounding areas that you could potentially serve, looking at grants you've received or other grants that are out there from your state, what is going to allow you to stack, or if your state has another program out there, if you get money from that, will it prevent you from getting any money in the future? And so with that, I'm really interested in kind of knowing who is in process here. So Jonathan, if you want to pull up our poll number 3. And so interested for those of you on the call, who's currently working on a grant or funding application right now, either with their state or maybe you worked on Reconnect 3 or you worked on ARPA.
Okay, we had a good amount of answers come in. It looks like 36% said yes and 64% no, that's currently not working on an application.
Oh, perfect. Great information. Thank you everyone who replied to that poll. Next kind of set of additional advice is, this is the point that I hit on, bullet number 1 that I hit on earlier, is yes, look at your network, look at your customers. Of course, you probably, it's not like you have 100% penetration in your market. So there's opportunity where your network exists today that maybe somebody else serves, but outside of your footprint, Where else can you make an impact? Make sure that you really draw that circle bigger so that you have the opportunity to do more. I think build your team and your partners. When you look at the work that you do with ISP supplies, using them as an education resource, working with your local government, working with your state, working with Adtran on understanding all the broadband funding pieces that we're tracking and letting us share that with you. Working with your customers, sending them surveys. You really cannot have enough support, and it's going to take an entire group of people to achieve success with that. And I think we see that in our day-to-day operations. It takes so many people to do it right, do it well, and continue to grow. So just make sure that you're building a good group, not only internally in your organization, but externally, including your partners, who you're choosing to help engage and ask questions on, who can provide you insights and different pieces so that you don't have to do that research. The more people that you put in there, the more insights you're going to get, the easier it's going to be for your internal team so they don't have to go out and find that information. And again, I can't really harp on this one enough, but get talking with your state broadband office. If you don't know who that is, that's not a problem, easy to find. But we do have the entire list, and here on the next slide, you can scan a QR code to submit your information, and Adtran can get in touch with you and get you that so that you have it if you don't already. And once you're engaged with the state broadband office, make sure that that contact is regular. If they are having meetings, get involved. Make sure you're sending someone to those. I know I live in the state of Colorado, and I know our state broadband office leader really well, and she's starting some new focus groups where she is not just inviting kind of community leaders, government leaders in, but she's inviting the operators to be a part of those discussions and holding different lunch and learns, holding different webinars. And so you're not always going to get the best answer by just asking what the state they're doing, and they may say, well, we have a meeting, we don't have a meeting, and then you say, okay. Provide a suggestion. Provide hosting an education lunch and learn at your facility for them to come in, for them to bring their state broadband group, which in some states, it might be one person, which is not enough. So invite them to come in, invite other community leaders, government leaders to come in. Be the leader to actually present ideas to get people together. And so if your state doesn't have a solid plan, help suggest one. If they don't have the resources, how can you help provide resources to pull meetings together? Being able to really get in there, you're going to stay in the loop once you build that relationship. And like I had said, during this period where the states are building their 5-year plan, this is the most critical time. So make sure that you're getting started now. If you've not reached out to your state broadband office, make it a goal by next Wednesday to drop an email and introduce yourself and to schedule a first phone call to understand what they're doing. Waiting for the states to determine more is only going to hinder your success because you're not going to understand the scoring or the influence of it, requirements. You can help influence that by getting started now. So I want to just go over kind of some of the final highlights here. And so community engagement, reach out to those community anchor institutions. Maybe you serve some of them, and if you do, that's amazing because you probably already have an actual relationship where you can get insights. If you don't, start the conversations and start the conversation as being a broadband thought leader. Some of these community anchor institutions may not be aware, they might be, I can tell you to all of them, reliable, high-speed internet is critical to the way that they run. Should it be a school, a library, hospital, they all need broadband. So get engaged with them, understand their challenges, help them succeed, and be able to talk with the state about that. Track that. Make sure that you have a plan to include that in your application. If you've not talked to your state broadband office, I've only said this 55 times today. I have a counter going here. Do that. Set a goal by October 1st, by next Wednesday. Have the discussion first internally. What is it you want to achieve? Who's going to be the person from your organization to lead that charge? What do you want the outcome to be? If you have a single person who's going to lead that, what is the expectation of then sharing that information back internally? Is it going to be a monthly type webinar that they're going to hold for your group internally on it? Have the conversation internally, reach out to the state and help be a thought leader. If you want, you can scan the QR code that is there in the middle, and we can reach out to you and share with you the information we have. We, of course, are tracking everything happening from the NTIA, but all of the funding insights from RDOF and ARPA and Reconnect 3, so we can help you understand what's happening in your state and also at a national level. So feel free to complete that form. The next piece I do want to mention, a lot of you were at the Fiber Connect conference that was in June that the Fiber Broadband Association puts on. They will have their big show again in 2023, but it's, I think, really important to know that at that point, the state's 5-year plans will be close to done or potentially done. And so waiting for that next big Fiber Broadband Association event is going to be too late for you to learn more on the fiber side. But the Fiber Broadband Association is holding regional events. The one in Columbus is their last for 2022. They will be holding 4 more in 2023. But if you have somebody on your team who can make that Columbus event, I would highly recommend it. Adtran has been present at all of those. The most recent one was in Colorado in August. It is a single day event, a power day of all things fiber. They are, for the Columbus event, they are putting a large focus on state broadband insights. They will also be talking about community engagement a ton. You'll get access to this presentation, which this will be hyperlinked for you, but you can just go to the Fiber Broadband Association website. And then if you click on events, you'll see regional events, and you can go and look at the agenda. The agenda is out there on their website. So I would highly recommend you get somebody from your team registered for that and get them there. In addition, Adtran is planning, and ISP Supplies will be involved, a half-day kind of technology day that will happen before the November 3rd event. So on November 2nd, there will be kind of a pre-conference that'll more focus on the technology side, including pieces on kind of building the best connected home experience, talking about fiber access, building the resilient and future-proof network. Also, we will have focus on digital equity and promoting your network, your community at a national level. Once the finalization of the details for November 2nd come out, everyone on this webinar will receive an invite to that event. So you don't need to watch for it. We already have your information down, and ISP Supplies will get that over to you. But for now, check out the agenda for the FBA event. I'd highly recommend you get registered for that. It will be a great opportunity to learn more of what's happening with funding. Like I mentioned, from the state broadband side, also community engagement side, hearing from other operators, lessons learned, ideas, all of that. So with that, want to just be able to close it out. We have about 10 minutes left for us to hit on some questions that came in via chat. So Jonathan?
Great, thank you very much for that excellent presentation and all the insights you provided. A lot of really good info was covered. Yeah, a couple questions did come in. We do have some time to kind of review a couple of them. Here's one of them. What are some topics I should cover when I talk to the state broadband office?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I think that, and I mentioned some of these, but talk about it internally first. What is it that you want to achieve? It will not, regardless of how you go about it, will not be a wasted effort. But talk about it internally. What would be your goal? And what are the questions you want to ask? I think that some of the first things is, once you have the main contact, reaching out to them. How many people do they have on their team? Do they have people with a broadband or telecom background? Where do they stand in their process of their planning, their 5-year plan? Have they started any of the discussions around digital equity? What does digital equity mean for your state? Also, offering education to them, especially being a wireless provider. What is it that you know about us as an operator? Do you know that we serve 2,800 people in ABC County, and out of those 2,800 people, 90% of them have access to 25 by 3, or whatever percentage is 100 by 20. We serve ABC community anchor institutions. This is how we're involved in the community. This is why this is important. Be an education resource. Make sure you give them data. Ask what they're doing. Are they having monthly meetings? Again, I mentioned this a little bit ago. If they're not, don't just say okay. Offer. Would it be helpful for us to have your team down and we could do a lunch and learn for hour and a half, 2 hours, and talk about technology, talk about us as a service provider, talk through what we've done on funding in the past, offer to hold a meeting. Even if they're having a state meeting, figure out when it is and attend those, but still offer for your group to hold an education session for them. And if you can't do it in your facility, offer a webinar. The other key things that I think would be important to talk about your states on, of course, all this can't happen in one conversation, but what is it that they're looking at for streamlining right-of-way policies? That is a big piece that can help. So what are they doing, or what ideas do you have on that? Also around dig once policies, that will be another hot topic for the state. And then pole attachment policies and one touch make ready. So those 4 topics, and I'll just repeat them again, is the streamlining right of way, dig once, pole attachment policies, and one touch make ready. Those are hot topics that are happening, where as operators, we can understand what's being discussed. We can offer ideas on how to help with that. So I would add all of those to your list when you start talking with your state broadband office.
Great, thank you. Here's another good one. Are all the community engagement initiatives expected to be out of pocket, or can they be monetized for the services rendered?
They can. So your community, so I guess I look at this 2 different ways. If you are putting a new community engagement plan in place, there is opportunity to go after funding for that. But your initial community engagement efforts, as far as talking with the leaders, talking with each community anchor institution, those are going to be efforts that will be kind of out of pocket, more so just your time and your commitment to them. But as you work on your funding plans, If you have a true community engagement plan, that can be included in your funding application.
Thank you. This next question is regarding BEAD funding. Is 100% fiber going to be a requirement of BEAD funding?
So every state that I've talked with, and I've heard the NTIA talk on this, and you can read it in the NOFO, fiber will be prioritized. But again, you have to remember where the funding is going. So it's first unserved, anywhere that doesn't have 25x3. Then it's underserved for anything that's not 100x20. And lastly, community anchor institutions that do not have access to a gig symmetrical. And so some of those will require fiber, but if there is an area where there is money available in a certain county and you and your competitor are both going after it, priority will be put on fiber. It's not going to be a requirement, but there will be priority and focus on fiber. And depending on how your state does their scoring system, more than likely more points will be awarded for fiber to the PRIM plans.
Awesome, thank you. And this is all the time that we have to review questions. If any more questions come up, please send them to sales@ispsupplies.com and we will get those answers for you. We'll also be uploading today's presentation on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ispsupplies, as well as sharing it on our Facebook at facebook.com/ispsupplies. So please make sure to subscribe and follow us. Thanks again to everyone who tuned in. Thanks again, Ash, and the entire Adtran team that made today's presentation possible. It was an excellent presentation. And we hope that everyone has a blessed rest of your week. Till next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, ISP Supplies. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you. Have a good week.